I could still be a part of a vigorous national debate without having to offer myself for the presidency. You have to believe, as I've said before, in your heart and in your mind that you're ready, and I don't believe that I am. I did not run for this job for failure. I ran for this job for success. For success not just for me personally and my children, but success for my state. And hopefully to provide an example for the rest of the country that you can do the difficult things.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has made a national name for himself with his blunt style and aggressive approach to budget cutting and labor unions. And despite his promise not to run on the Republican ticket in 2012, he is sure to play a role in shaping his party's politics. Governor Christie, thank you for being here with the caucus at the New York Times. Let's start with collective bargaining. It's obviously in the news. What would be gained by denying public workers the right to collectively bargain?
I mean, the problem in New Jersey is we've had collective bargaining that's been one-sided collective bargaining. Where no one's been in there standing up for the taxpayer and vigorously bargaining in an adversarial nature. That's the nature of collective bargaining. It's an adversarial situation, which you hope ultimately leads to a collective decision. The problem here is that the unions want to have it both ways. They want collective bargaining, but then if they don't get everything they want at the collective bargaining table, they use their money to go to the legislature and get enhanced benefits. And then when we try to take some of those enhanced benefits back legislatively, they say, oh, you're violating the sanctity of the collective bargaining process. Well, listen, you can't have it both ways.
You've been pretty blunt about your assessment of President Obama as a leader in his leadership role. You've practically called him a coward for not leading.
Well, remember, my critique of President Obama was specifically on one thing, which was on the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid troika that he refused to deal with in the context of his State of the Union or his budget that he put forward. In other ways, I think the president has been very courageous in some of his leadership. On education reform, I think he's been very courageous, especially for a Democrat. I thought his leadership in the aftermath of the Arizona shooting was something that was real good leadership and brought the country together. In some areas of renewable energy, I agree with the president. I don't want it to be mischaracterized that I've said he's not a good leader. What I've said was he disappointed me when he didn't step up and deal with the thing that consumes 80+% of the federal budget, which are those three huge entitlement programs, because it is the defining financial issue of our time.
Stay with that subject, but shift to the 2012 presidential campaign. Do you see that issue, the entitlement issue, as also defining that race? And how do you think people should sort out the candidates that are going to come forward on the Republican side to challenge the president?
Well, it's hard to tell, given that it's a good year off. I think it should be. Because I think anybody who runs for president and is unwilling to talk about entitlements and put forward their plan on how they deal with it is selling people short. And so how it'll shake out in the Republican primary, I think, is very dependent upon who it is.
Is there anybody that you see that you have confidence in at this early stage that will talk about that?
Well, I think Governor Daniels gave a very thoughtful speech on that at CPAC a week or so ago. And he talked about that in some real detail. And I think Governor Daniels, has credibility given some of the things he's done as a budget balancer in Indiana.
Let me read you a couple of quotes. One quote: leadership today in America has to be about doing the big things and being courageous. Now is the time it matters most in New Jersey's future and America's future. And then finally, I started the conversation, I took the risk. I think that's what we elect leaders for, hence the name, All of which suggests an impatience and a desire for leaders to step up. And yet you've said you're not going to step up and run for president. Why should people not think that you're preaching something to others that you're not following yourself?
Well, listen, what I'm trying to do is inspire a conversation among those people who
but
want to be president.
Why not start the conversation? Why not be part of the conversation in the next year?
Well, because I think that's an intensely personal decision. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have opinions on what the national issue should be just because you're not willing to run for president yourself. I think that's a false choice. I could still be a part of a vigorous national debate and weigh in on my views on those things without having to offer myself for the presidency. And I think that's such a personal decision. You have to believe, as I've said before, in your heart and in your mind that you're ready, and I don't believe that I am.
You're a big guy. People talk about that all the time. Do you sense that your physical bigness is a political asset?
It depends on the day. It depends on the day. Some days I think people in New Jersey look at me and say, yeah, he struggles with his weight and so do I. And it probably makes them feel that maybe I understand them a little bit more because I have some of my own personal struggles. Other days just look at my Twitter page, and see some of the awful things that are written about the fact that I have struggles with my weight and some of the terrible things that people say. In the end of it, I need to get it under control so I can have my long-term health. And I have, 4 kids between 7 and 17. I want to be around to watch them get married and have children themselves.